The Malon warship's plasma cannons blasted the TCS Resilience into twisted, melted scrap, but not before the century-old human ship unleashed a hellstorm of kinetic missiles that crippled the arrogant alien fleet. That fateful battle was a pivotal moment in humanity's ascension to the stars. Commander Bobby Coleman, now an old veteran, recounted the story to wide-eyed cadets at the Terran Naval Academy. In 2257, humanity cobbled together whatever ships it could to begin exploring the galaxy. Resilience was one such vessel, outdated but crewed by 150 brave men and women, with Coleman as its young captain. The technologically superior Malon had been watching and mocking humanity from afar. Emperor Niran and his council viewed the primitive humans as no threat. They set a trap, ambushing Resilience with a dozen advanced warships as it scouted a new star system. Niran watched the confrontation from his throne a dozen light-years away, ordering his ships to toy with the humans before destroying them as a message. Outgunned and outclassed, it seemed Resilience and her crew were doomed. But Coleman had other plans. In a brilliant tactical move, he turned his ship's weaknesses into strengths. The battle was fierce and losses heavy, but if Resilience fell, it would prove humanity was not ready for the stars. The future of human expansion hung on the actions of her valiant crew that day. The cadets listened with rapt attention as the old commander described the impossible odds and how he snatched victory from the jaws of defeat. The Malon would learn to fear the indomitable human spirit, as Resilience showed the galaxy what happens when you poke a sleeping giant. "But I wasn't going to let some alien bastards off humanity that easy," Coleman said, pausing for effect as the cadets hung on his every word. "See, I had a hunch Emperor Niran would try to catch us with our pants down. That slime ball never could resist an easy kill. So I told Hernandez to get creative with our reactor, turn it into a weapon that'd make the Malon piss their shiny silver spacesuits." Coleman grinned, a sparkle in his aged eyes. And boy did Hernandez deliver. That crazy son of a bitch rigged up a directed energy weapon that made our fusion reactor look like a kid's science fair project. When those Malon ships came at us, shields up and guns hot, I gave the order. Hernandez flipped the switch and our reactor pulsed like a beating heart. The commander's voice grew louder, his hands gesturing wildly. A beam of pure blinding energy shot out from the Resilience's bow, so bright it lit up the whole damn system. It cut through those Malon ships like they were made of tissue paper. Their shields, designed for plasma and kinetics, didn't do jack shit against our improvised weapon. 3 of their ships just vaporized. Poof, gone, nothing but atoms left. The cadets gasped, eyes wide with awe. Coleman chuckled. The rest of the Malon fleet scattered like roaches when you turn on the lights. They had no idea what hit them. I wasn't about to let them regroup, so I ordered a full barrage from our kinetic weapons. Our crew, the best damn gunners in the galaxy, targeted their engines and weapons. 2 more Malon ships went dark, dead in the water. Now Emperor Niran, that pompous prick, was watching the whole thing from his throne room. I bet he nearly choked on his fancy alien wine when he saw his precious warships getting torn apart by a primitive human vessel. He was pounding his fist, screaming at his ships to regroup and take us out. But it was too late. The Resilience had drawn first blood, and we weren't about to stop until every last Malon ship was scrap metal. Coleman took a swig from his water glass, then cleared his throat. Now I wish I could say the Resilience came out of that battle unscathed, but that'd be a lie. Our secret weapon worked like a charm, but it came at a cost. Hernandez's modifications pushed the reactor past its limits. The power surge fried half our systems and left us dead in the water. The cadets leaned forward, hanging on Coleman's every word. We still had conventional weapons and shields, but they were in bad shape. And those Malon bastards, they knew our tricks now. The 7 ships we hadn't blown to hell regrouped and came at us hard. They concentrated fire on our engines and gun batteries, trying to leave us helpless. Coleman's eyes grew distant as he relived the desperate battle. My crew, bless their souls, they fought like lions. Hernandez and his engineers jury-rigged repairs faster than the Malon could blast holes in us. Reynolds and the gunners made every shot count, scorching alien hulls with kinetic slugs, but it wasn't enough. He sighed heavily. Shields failed hull breaches across 3 decks. We were taking casualties. I knew we couldn't last much longer, not against 7 Malon destroyers, so I gave the order I hoped I'd never have to give. Abandon ship. Gasps echoed through the auditorium. Coleman nodded grimly. I told the crew to get to the escape pods, scatter in all directions, make the Malons split their forces to chase them. They didn't want to leave, stubborn bastards, but I insisted, made it a direct order. What about you, sir? A young cadet asked, her voice trembling. Coleman's lips quirked in a sad smile. Someone had to stay behind, give the Malon a proper send-off. I couldn't ask my crew to do that. Hernandez, Reynolds, and a few other brave fools volunteered to remain with me. We had a plan, you see. Overload the reactor, turn the whole damn ship into a fusion bomb. Take those Malon assholes with us straight to hell. He closed his eyes for a moment, remembering. As the escape pods shot off in all directions, the Malon ignored them. They thought they had us right where they wanted us, a crippled ship ripe for the taking. I saw Emperor Niran's ugly mug on the view screen, gloating as he ordered his ships to move in for the kill. Arrogant prick thought he'd won, but we still had an ace up our sleeve. Coleman leaned forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper as the cadet sat in rapt attention. Hernandez looked at me, sweat pouring down his face. It's now or never, Captain, he said, his hands flying over the reactor controls. I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. The commander took a deep breath, reliving the intensity of that moment. I opened a channel to the Malon ships, my voice steady as a rock. Emperor Niran, this is Captain Coleman of the TCS Resilience. Our reactor is about to blow, taking out everything within a million clicks. You have 2 choices, run like hell or die with us. Coleman's eyes flashed with grim satisfaction. I could see Niran's face on the view screen, twisted with rage. He screamed at his ships to obliterate us, spittle flying from his mouth, but it was too late. The cadets held their breath, hanging on every word. Hernandez yelled, "Reactor critical! 30 seconds!" I braced myself, watching the Malon ships closing in. They unleashed everything they had, plasma bolts and kinetic slugs hammering our hull. Consoles exploded, sparks flying. The ship shuddered like a wounded beast. Coleman's voice grew louder, more intense. The reactor hit critical mass, and the Resilience exploded in a blinding flash. The shockwaves slammed into the Malon fleet, ripping through their shields like tissue paper. Their hulls crumpled, shattered, debris spinning off into space. He paused, letting the image sink in. Niran's flagship, the last to be hit, tumbled out of control. I could hear him screaming over the comms, cursing us with his dying breath. Then, silence. The cadets sat in stunned silence, processing the magnitude of the Resilience's sacrifice. The Terran fleet arrived minutes later, responding to the distress signal from our escape pods. They found a graveyard of twisted Malon wreckage and the scattered remnants of the Resilience. They brought our pods aboard, hailing us as heroes. But the real heroes were those who gave their lives to strike a blow against Malon tyranny. Coleman's voice grew somber as he recounted the aftermath of the Resilience's sacrifice. The news spread like wildfire across the galaxy. Species that had suffered under the Malon's boot for centuries saw a glimmer of hope. If a single human ship could bloody the nose of the mighty Malon Empire, then perhaps freedom was within reach after all. He leaned back in his chair, a distant look in his eyes. The Terran Confederation found itself at the center of a galactic uprising. Races we'd never even heard of were reaching out, offering support, intel, anything to help bring down the Malon. It was humbling, really, to see how one act of defiance could inspire so many. The war that followed was long and brutal. The Malon, for all their arrogance, were a formidable foe. They fought tooth and nail for every system, every planet. But with each year that passed, their grip weakened. More and more of their subjugated worlds rebelled, joining the growing coalition led by the Terrans. I remember the day we received word that Emperor Niran had been captured, Coleman said, a hint of satisfaction in his voice. The coward had tried to flee as his capital world fell, but our allies intercepted his ship. He was brought before a war crimes tribunal, forced to answer for centuries of atrocities. Justice at last. But even in victory, the cost was staggering. Countless lives had been lost on both sides, entire planets reduced to rubble. The crew of the Resilience, those who had survived, struggled to adapt to a galaxy at peace. Hernandez, he couldn't cope with the memories, Coleman said softly. The friends he'd lost, the things he'd seen, it ate away at him. Last I heard, he'd retired to some quiet colony world, trying to find some semblance of peace. Reynolds, on the other hand, threw himself into the rebuilding efforts. He led teams to some of the hardest-hit worlds, helping to establish new governments, new infrastructure. That man had a talent for bringing people together, for finding common ground in the midst of chaos, Coleman recalled with a smile. As for Coleman himself, the war had taken its toll. His body bore the scars of countless battles, his mind haunted by the faces of the fallen. He knew he could no longer serve on the front lines, but he was not ready to fade away into obscurity. I took a teaching position at the academy, he explained to the cadets. I figured if I couldn't fight anymore, I could at least pass on what I'd learned to the next generation, teach them about sacrifice, about courage in the face of impossible odds. Every year, on the anniversary of the Battle of the Resilience, Coleman would gather with the surviving crew members. They would share stories, raise glasses to their fallen comrades, and remind each other that their sacrifice had not been in vain. The Resilience may be gone, Coleman said, his voice thick with emotion, but what she represents will endure. As long as there are those willing to stand up to tyranny, to fight for what's right, there will always be hope. He fell silent, his gaze distant as if seeing into the past. The cadets, each lost in their own thoughts, pondered the weight of the old commander's words. They had grown up in a galaxy shaped by the actions of heroes like the crew of the Resilience, never fully comprehending the sacrifices that had been made. But now, faced with the living history before them, they began to understand the true cost of freedom. In the stillness of the auditorium, a new resolve took hold in the hearts of the cadets. They would honor the memory of the Resilience and all those who had fallen in the fight against the Malon. They would take up the mantle of defenders of the Terran Confederation, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. For in the end, the greatest tribute they could offer was to ensure that the flame of hope and defiance, lit so boldly by Coleman and his crew, would never be extinguished. If you finish this story, please subscribe and like the video. Then leave a comment that says, "I liked the story," and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.